Hi, fourth grade. This is part 8 of Whatshisface. Chapter 16 The Wolfson Collection. Cooper stands in line, his hands jammed in his pockets, nervously waiting his turn to board one of the school buses. He can't believe none of the other 7th graders noticed the ghost crawling on the top of the lead bus, exploring every inch of the luggage rack. Luckily, it's a bright sunny day, so it's easy to mistake the pale glow that is Roddy as an errant trick of light. At last, Cooper reaches the door and steps up onto the vehicle. Next thing he knows, his feet are knocked out from under him, and he's flat on his back in the aisle by the empty driver's seat. His first thought is for the GX 4000. What if it breaks and Roddy's got nowhere to go back to? What happens to the ghost then? He reaches in his pocket, but before he can draw out the phone, Brock's big face appears about an inch from his. Did you fall down, kid? Here, let me help you up. He holds out his hand, but when Cooper tries to take it, Brock's elbow comes down on Cooper's sternum, pinning him to the dirty floor. Get off me, Cooper complains. Hey, did you say something? Brock counters. Funny, last time I talked to you, it came out all Shakespearean-y, like maybe you're trying to steal another guy's part. It's not my fault I know your lines better than you do, Cooper shot back. I think it kinda is, Brock tells him, still pressing down. You didn't learn 'em by accident. And this isn't about Romeo, is it? It's about Juliet. And like I said before, forget it. As Cooper struggles to get Brock off him, a cloud of shimmering light swoops in through the door and flashes into Brock's eyes. With a cry, he falls backwards and Cooper scrambles up. What was that? Brock demanded. What did you just do? A faint glow sweeps into Cooper's pocket and disappears. Nothing, Cooper said innocently. Don't give me that. You flashed me with a laser pointer or something. How could I do that? Cooper counters. You were pinning me down. Hey, what's the holdup? The teacher comes pushing through the line. We're supposed to be on schedule, you know. He stops short at the sight of Cooper and Brock, obviously in confrontation. For sure, he's thinking about the ball and how the DJ's microphone became a battleground for dueling Romeos. I don't have to remind you two, he said sternly, how important it is for us to be on our best behavior today. This is the one chance we get to see the largest exhibit of Shakespearean material that exists in the world today. Remember, this is no ordinary museum where you can buy a ticket and walk in off the street. This is a private collection. It's a privilege for our school to be allowed to view it, one that can be taken away if we don't show proper respect for our surroundings. Mumbling apologies, Cooper and Brock seat themselves on opposite sides of the aisle. The buses load quickly and start for Wolfson Estates. Cooper takes out his phone so Roddy can enjoy looking out the finger-marked and fly-specked windows during the 15-minute ride. At last, the bus passes through a set of magnificent wrought iron gates featuring an old English W painted in gleaming gold leaf. The roadway is lined with stately poplars and snakes through immaculately groomed gardens. The mansion is impressive, with its lead-painted windows and stone, but it's obvious that Mr. Wolfson's pride and joy, the focal point of the property, is the museum. He designed it as an Elizabethan palace in the form of an E. A a long main building with large wings on each side and a smaller central wing that serves as the entrance. A sniffle comes through the earbud. If I knew not what I was in thy world, said Roddy in a shaky voice, I would wager my very bet that this was Howard House, home of the Duke of Norfolk. Of course, ne'er was I permitted inside such a structure, not I, the son of a warlock. The buses unloaded and the teachers herded the seventh graders into the museum. Cooper spied Jolie up ahead, walking with Brock. Fine. Romeo's got his Juliet. Jolie turns around and scans the crowd behind her and waves when she sees Cooper. He waves back, but by that time her gaze has moved on, and he finds herself hailing Brock's unfriendly glare. Although the museum is designed to look as if it was built 100 years ago, the interior is elegant and modern. Stepping inside, the first thing the students see is a 12-foot-high bronze statue of William Shakespeare. There are oohs and ahs, and cell phones appear, snapping pictures. Cooper pulls out his GX4000 to give Roddy a view, but is careful to keep his finger off the button. Roddy recognizes the figure immediately. And so we meet again, thou thief, thou snake in the grass, thou small-minded cleaner of chamber pots. A curator welcomes them, ushering them 2 by 2 into a small theater for a video on the life and times of the Baird. For the students who have spent all week studying Shakespeare and learning Romeo and Juliet, it's actually pretty interesting. But Cooper hears barely a word of it. Roddy is ranting in his earbud, calling down curses, plagues, and a pox on that jump-up actor and false playwright who stole my beautiful Barnabas and Ursula and turned it into a massacre. When the ghost stops raving, Cooper assumes it's because he ran out of words, having used them all. The video goes on to the life of Somerset Wolfson and his obsession with everything Shakespearean. There are no longer handwritten manuscripts by Shakespeare himself in existence today. The only example of the Baird's signature are on a few old legal documents now owned by Mr. Wolfson. Beyond that, the billionaire targeted the earliest published versions of Shakespeare's plays, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. In the centuries after Shakespeare's death, printers made changes to the text so they could release new editions. Most of those changes are small, but they added up. That means the first is the closest we'll ever get to see what Shakespeare actually wrote. The Wolfson collection, the piece concludes, houses more than those first folios than any other museum in the world, and more than in any other museums combined. When the light comes back on, Brock lets out one of his monstrous, "I'm Romeo, wherefore art me" announcements. He's shushed, not just by the teachers, but also a handful of students, including Jolie. The tour begins, leading the students through stunning room after room with large glassed-in, climate-controlled cases. For a moment, even Roddy's complaints are silent. "Mayhap these pages were printed in mine own shop," he exclaims. "Perchance they were read by the fair Ursula herself. And lo, yonder press might have been touched by these very hands." On the far side of the exhibit stands a 16th century printing press in the process of inking a quadruple-sized page. There's an entire display devoted to paper. No two pages were quite the same. different thicknesses, different cuts, different shades of white. With a click, Roddy leaves the GX4000 and enters the case where the glass meets the plaster base. Cooper looks away, hoping that other eyes will follow his and not notice the ghostly form swirling inside the paper exhibit. "Don't do that," Cooper hisses once Roddy is back in the phone. "Forgive me, Cooper Vega. To see such a wealth of paper hath pierced me to the heart. The very slight maketh my fingers itch to write another play. But alas, to what purpose? Evil Shakespeare would come back from the tomb to steal my work yet again." Despite Roddy's complaining, the ghost thoroughly enjoys the next gallery, which shows Elizabethan daily life. There are examples of clothing that remind Cooper of the puffy shirt, vest, pantaloons, cap, and shoes that Roddy wears on the phone screen. The ghost points out several styles of dress that adorn the fair Ursula. At the sight of a mannequin of Queen Elizabeth I, Roddy propels himself out of the GX4000 and tries to kneel at her feet, hovering just a few inches off the floor. There are also suits of armor, weapons, cooking utensils, plates, and furniture. "That dining table," Roddy exclaims in a hushed tone, "'tis a perfect match for the one we had in our kitchen." "Maybe it's the same one," Cooper suggests in an undertone. "Alas, no. Father's brimstone experiment number 12 caused it to explode most violently. I can attest to its superb quality, for it burned very slowly and gave off great heat." "I guess that experiment didn't go too well, huh?" Cooper said. "'Twas better than brimstone experiment number 13, Roddy laments. "That was when my father was charged as a warlock. 'Tis a travesty that Alistair Northrop has been forgotten, whilst a charlatan like Shakespeare hath museums devoted to his accomplishments." Roddy's mood improved when the curator takes the group out to the back door into Mr. Wolfson's scale model of Shakespearean Globe Theatre. Cooper is amazed at its size and his sophistication. With a capacity of nearly 3,000, excuse me, the original Globe was larger than most Broadway theaters. There are 3 tiers of seating. A large ground-level, open-air pit surrounding the stage for standees who could not afford a ticket in one of the covered galleries. "'Twas my dream to see Barnabas and Ursula perform in such a place one day," said Roddy. "Then you succeeded 1,000%, Cooper assures him. "Romeo and Juliet is one of the most famous plays in history. It has been performed millions of times all over the world." "Not my play, Cooper Vega. His." The class takes a few minutes to explore the theater, experimenting with some of their lines from the stage while their classmates report on the acoustics from the pit and the various tiers. When Cooper Vega reaches the stage, the glower he receives from Brock would easily melt lead. The teacher shoots him a pleading look. The last thing the director needs is a war between the 2 Romeos. "Here's Romeo, man," Cooper delivers a second watchman's line. "We have found him in the churchyard." "This place is amazing," Jolie calls out from the top of the back balcony. "I can hear you perfectly." "Big whoop," rumbled Brock. Whatshisface remembers his gigantic speech. He remembers your gigantic speeches too, Aiden points out. Brock glares at him. I could remember all those too if I studied. When the group re-enters the building, the students feel the blast of air conditioning immediately. It's much colder here than in the gallery they visited before, and the curator explains why. This room contains the most precious part of the Wolfson collection, the rare first folios. Practically the voice of Shakespeare himself, the curator announces in reverence. Would that I could spit, Roddy sees. Through the earbud comes a sound that can only be Roddy trying his hardest to spit. Cooper fights down the urge to giggle. It's the biggest room they've been in so far. Long, with cathedral ceilings flooded with filtered natural light. Dozens of display cases dot the room, each one containing a first folio under heavy bulletproof glass. The students are drawn to them like iron filings to magnets, peering down at the words that were printed there hundreds of years before. The boisterous buzz of over 100 seventh graders diminishes to a murmur. Some of them read quietly. Most of them just stare. Shakespeare fan or no, everyone understands that they are looking at objects of incredible age and value. Cooper Vega. Roddy's voice is urgent in the earbud. There is something here. Yeah, Cooper whispers, the first folios. He holds up the GX 4000 to give the ghost a better look. The ancient book is open to Hamlet, and Cooper can make out the line, "To thine own self be true." Roddy said that once. Maybe the ghost had more in common with Shakespeare than he likes to admit. Not this rubbish, Roddy insists. I feel something of great strength summoning me, beckoning me. One of the displays, Cooper asks. I know not. Methinketh I feel the attraction coming from beyond yonder door. Yonder? Then he sees it. An interior wall stretches the full length of the gallery. It's white and featureless with one exception. There is an almost invisible door at the far end, frameless, with no knob, and only a recessed keyhole. The secret collection, Cooper explains. I understand this not. It's just a rumor. But everyone says the wolf has a whole stash of secret stuff that he can't display because he's not supposed to own it. Maybe what's calling your name is in there. And then a new voice. Deep, but with a childlike enthusiasm, rings out through the galleria. Welcome to the Wolfson collection. Into their midst strides a stocky man of medium height, a shock of white hair brushed straight back from his high forehead. Although he'd never met the newcomer, Cooper recognizes him immediately from TV and newspapers. It's Somerset Wolfson, their billionaire host. Chapter 17, Public Enemy Number 1. At the urging of the teachers, all the students gather around Stratford's wealthiest citizen. I'm hearing great things about your progress in rehearsal, and I can't wait to be there in the front row on opening night of Romeo and Juliet, the billionaire tells them. You know, when your little community offered me a warm welcome, I thought of all the ways I could give back, and the greatest gift I have is my love of the Baird of Avon, William Shakespeare, the most superlative playwright and poet this world has ever produced. This attraction is most mysterious, Roddy intones through the earbud. Methink it, I cannot resist it. Shh, Cooper hisses. Excuse me? Mr. Wolfson's sharp gaze is suddenly riveted on Cooper. Do you have a question? Sorry to interrupt. Nonsense, Mr. Wilson beams. I'm anxious to hear your take on what you've seen. First things first, what is your role in Romeo and Juliet? I'm Cooper Redden's second watchman. An amused chuckle breezes through the student body. The billionaire smiles tolerantly. Every role, no matter how small, represents a vital part of Shakespeare's genius vision. Now, what is your question, young man? Oh, I don't have a. Cooper begins. The door, Roddy exclaims. Ask about the door. What's behind the door over there? Cooper blurts out. Mr. Wolfson's smile disappears. That's a storage room. Storage for what? Cooper persists. Really, young man. The billionaire is losing his patience. We are surrounded by such treasures as most people only dream of seeing, and all you can think of is where mops and brooms are kept. I must see for myself, Roddy announces in the earbud. There's a click, and the ghost form begins to rise out of the phone. Cooper does the only thing he can think of to distract everyone's attention from Roddy's escape. He launches into a coughing fit that has him hugging one of the display cases and fogging the glass. Out of the corner of his eye, he spies the ghost sailing overhead and the first folios down the long room to the mysterious door. Then he reshapes himself into a long, thin ribbon and goes through the keyhole. At last, Cooper straightens up and attempts to clean off the glass with a sleeve. Never mind that, Mr. Wolfson snaps, irritated. Does anyone have a real question? You've just taken a tour through the most complete collection in the world of the works of the one true Beard. Are you sure he's as true as you think he is? Cooper interrupts. The teacher shoots him a warning look. You're speaking of the theory that some Shakespearean works were written by other playwriters of the time, the billionaire said stiffly. It's all nonsense, of course. No serious scholar believes that. Well, what about Barnabas and Ursula? Mr. Wolfson's shock is too genuine to be faked. His face turns brick red and his eyes bulge. He opens his mouth to speak, but no sound comes out. All eyes turn to Cooper. No one can remember ever seeing the great Somerset Wolfson so completely at a loss. I don't get it, puts in Brock in a loud voice. Who are Barnabas and Ursula? The billionaire finds his voice at last. I believe this tour has come to an end, he says in a subdued tone that has a shadow of his enthusiastic welcome. Your buses will be waiting in the main driveway. Without another word, he leaves them. I don't know what just happened, Brock announces with a laugh, but it was definitely Whatshisface's fault. That's enough. The teacher's face is unnaturally pale. We have never been asked to leave before. This is a disaster. Now form a line and let's go. But we're not ready to go, Cooper protests. He's in a panic. What about Roddy, who is still in the secret room? We haven't looked at all these great folios first. Director is angry. I hope you're kidding, Cooper. You can't be the only one who missed the fact that we've been kicked out, and probably because of you. I don't know what you said back there, but it clearly upset Mr. Wolfson. Now move along. Hoping to stall for time, Cooper shuffles to the back of the line. He gets a lot of dirty looks from his fellow cast members. Everybody knows who What's-His-Face is now. He's public enemy number one. Only Brock had a smile for him. Smooth move, Romeo. Wherefore art thou brains? Jolie regards Cooper sadly. What if Mr. Wolfson doesn't come to our show? She looked disappointed. The last thing Cooper wants is to disappoint her. In that moment, he feels more like an outsider than ever before. No local would ever risk insulting Mr. Wolfson in his own museum. It takes the new guy to do that. Yet, as upset as Cooper is, he's even more worried about Roddy. As the group from the middle school marches out the gallery, he keeps an eye on the mysterious door, hoping against hope to see Roddy's form heading for his home in the GX 4000. No luck. Cooper pauses at the museum door. Come on, Roddy, where are you? Hurry up, Cooper, the teacher prods. Why are you dragging your feet? I should probably go to the bathroom before we drive, he stammers. We'll be at the school in 15 minutes. You can make it that long. Yes, but can Roddy? What if the phone isn't there to receive him when he's done exploring the secret room? Sure, the ghost is able to cover some distance when he's out exploring, but in those cases, Roddy always knew where home base was. The phone wasn't getting on a bus to travel halfway across town. What if Roddy couldn't find his way back? What if he can't travel that far? What happens to the ghost who has no place to go? Obviously, Roddy can't die. That happened a long time ago. But will he be doomed to wander forever? Cooper shuffles across the driveway. All 3 buses were loaded now. The first 2 were pulling away. The teacher stands at the entrance to the third, twirling his arm in a gesture of impatience. As Cooper steps aboard, he considers going down with a twisted ankle. No, the director will never buy it. Neither will the other kids. He scans the bus for a friendly face and comes up empty. The door closes behind him, and the bus's engine roars to life. Sorry, Roddy. Excuse me. Sorry, Roddy, I tried. They headed down the drive and are just about to pass through the gates when a shimmering cloud shoots out of one of the museum's skylights and makes a beeline for the bus. Cooper spots it through the emergency door in the back, Roddy in hot pursuit. He leaps into the aisle and barks, "Stop!" The driver glances at him in the rearview mirror. "Sit down, you!" The teacher has reached the end of his rope. "Take your seat." From the row behind, Brock reaches up, grabs Cooper by the back of the collar, and hauls him down on the bench. Since all eyes were on Cooper, nobody sees the blob of faint shimmering light attach itself to the bus's emergency door. It hangs there for a brief second, then oozes in through a tiny crack in the glass. A split second later, it slips into Cooper's pocket and disappears. Weak with relief, Cooper slumps in his seat. Roddy is safe. That's all that matters. Barely have Cooper's shoulders touched the backrest when the earbud springs to life. "'Tis there, Cooper Vega. I have seen it with my very eyes." "What?" Cooper whispers. "Barnabas and Ursula," comes the supercharged reply. "The play that I never lived to finish. 'Tis there, and in my own hand." Proof positive. For the rest of the day, Cooper's mind is a whirl. There are so many things he has to ask Roddy, but back at school, that's impossible. The teacher has been watching him like a hawk ever since his strange behavior at the Wolfson collection. His fellow students are all over him too, curious about his altercation with Stratford's most famous resident. Being Whatshisface isn't fun, but at least he could rely on having a little privacy. Now he's the nut job that got the entire 7th grade kicked out of the museum, and everybody is interested in what makes him tick and why. Even in the seclusion of the bathroom stall, he's aware of his next-door neighbor possibly listening in. The last thing he can risk is a long, one-sided conversation with a ghost on his cell phone. But the suspense is killing him. Roddy has so much to tell him. The secret collection is real, and it has the ghost's original manuscript in it. To make matters worse, Roddy hasn't shut up since he arrived back on the bus. As Cooper tries to struggle through the rest of his day without getting anyone else mad at him, His head is being filled with endless details of the secret gallery behind the door. Costumes and props from Shakespeare's career as an actor, furniture and clothing from his house in Stratford upon Avon, documents with his signature, including his certificate of marriage to one Anne Hathaway. And each of these objects doth bear a seal or marking proclaiming it to be the property of a great museum or library. Roddy concludes, dost thou not see? These things are hidden behind a locked door because they're stolen, just as surely as Barnabas and Ursula was stolen from me by Shakespeare himself. I get it, Cooper hisses. I just can't talk right now. But Cooper Vega, thou must listen to me. It gets so bad that Cooper removes the wireless earbud. He can feel it in his pockets, buzzing away as the ghost goes on and on. Insulted, Roddy lets himself out of the phone and circles Cooper's head, shaking a shimmering fist, a highly risky mood in the middle of social studies class. After school, in the privacy of his room, Cooper pops the earbud back in. Roddy sounds a little insulted. Forsooth, now thou hast time for me? Sorry, Cooper apologized. It's just that this is a huge thing we have to talk out, and there's no way I could have done that in the middle of school. Not after I got into that beef with the wolf. Beef? I wasn't aware that dinner was served. Never mind that. The point is, the guy's a crook with a secret gallery full of stolen artifacts that he can't show anyone, or he'll get busted, you know. The watch will come after him. There is but one part I understand not, the ghost said, frowning in concentration on the screen. The wolf cannot exhibit the stolen items. This is as clear as dawn. But why doth he conceal Barnabas and Ursula? It was stolen, but by Shakespeare, not by him. And it is too late to arrest Shakespeare, though a more welcome addition to the gallows I cannot imagine. Don't you get it? Cooper explains. If the wolf displayed Barnabas and Ursula, that would show the whole world, proof positive that Shakespeare ripped off Romeo and Juliet, the first 3/4 of it anyway. Basically, he'd be admitting that he'd devoted his entire life and fortune to a big fake. He even made the people around here change the name of their town in honor of you-know-who. And if the great William Shakespeare jacked one of his most famous plays, you've got to wonder what else he helped himself to. His reputation would be basically shot. Trust me, the last thing the wolf wants is for anyone to find out about Barnabas and Ursula. Thou must shout it from the rooftops, Roddy insists. You're not serious. You remember what it was like to be a kid? Did anybody listen to you in 1596? Well, it isn't any different today. What am I supposed to do? Call up the newspaper and say, you know that playwright everybody thinks is the greatest genius of all time? Well, he's a phony. And how do I know? My pet ghost told me. Yeah, that'll work. Thou hast reason, Cooper Vega, but the solution is simple. I shall accompany thee. No man can deny the existence of a ghost that he sees with his own eyes, even if the ghost doth appear only on a phone. Too dangerous, Cooper tells him. Thou needst not worry that I might be killed. The gallows hath already set sail. It's not that, Cooper explains. Most people don't believe in ghosts in my world. If I let anybody see you, every scientist in the world would come down on us. They'll take the phone apart, circuit by circuit, until there's nothing left but dust. And what happens to you? Where will you go? Will you have to wander forever? Nothing but a cloud of sparkles? Will you just disappear? Thou paintest a grim picture, Roddy laments. My time was cruel with the plague, harsh laws, and grinding poverty. But this improvement hath the centuries brought, if there is no justice for me, for my Barnabas and Ursula. It stinks, Cooper agrees, but there's nothing you can do about it. The performance is on Saturday. Tomorrow the evening rehearsal starts. We aren't going to have time for anything but Romeo and Juliet. Sorry, Roddy. 'Tis not thy fault, Cooper Vega. But Cooper detects an expression on the ghost's face that he can't quite identify. Okay, we will start the next section shortly.